your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Well, happy Canada Day, everyone. I'm Naveen Day. Thanks for joining us for a look back at Alberta this week. Firefighters in Alberta are still dealing with 95 active wildfires. Most are located in the northern part of the province. Officials say 38 of the blazes are being held, while 7 are still out of control. So far, Alberta has experienced 727 wildfires this year. The province says 59% of the wildfires were caused by lightning, 12% were human-caused, and 28% are currently under investigation. Fire advisories are still in effect for both Banff National Park and Athabasca County. Officials are also reminding residents to exercise caution this Canada Day long weekend.
We are continuing to get in this support that has been helping us greatly. We're super appreciative of it. Like I said, the rain that we've had recently has really helped our firefighting efforts. Our firefighters have been able to go in and extinguish hot spots and work on containment guards within these fires to try and contain them. There is still a fire restriction in effect in the northern areas of the province. So that means that you can't have a campfire on public land. You can only have it on private property and within campgrounds.
The ban also includes fireworks and explosive targets. Premiers from across Western Canada met in Whistler, BC to discuss a number of issues which are impacting our provinces. Issues such as energy security, labour markets, and immigration. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith also addressed how her party is trying to protect Albertans from devastating wildfires and floods.
Part of what we just went through an historic fire season, and part of the thing that we need to concentrate on is how do we build fire guards for community and be proactive for that. We also know that with flooding, there's infrastructure we need to build to make communities more resilient against flooding. Those are the two biggest risks that we face in our province. Some of those require just major infrastructure investments. So I'd be curious to see what they would have in mind. I mean, I'm prepared to work with the federal government on things that make sense for Alberta. What makes sense for Alberta, since we are a natural gas basin and we are a hydrocarbon fueled economy, is working on carbon capture, utilization and storage, working on hydrogen, working with our partners in British Columbia in particular on exporting LNG so that we can reduce emissions around the world.
New numbers from the Alberta government's substance use surveillance system do not paint a pretty picture for overdose deaths here in Lethbridge. In April of this year, 20 people in our city died of an overdose. This is tied with the single-month record for the city from February of 2020. From January to the end of April of this year, the province says 56 people in Lethbridge died from an overdose. During the same periods in recent years, drug overdoses took the lives of 38 people in 2022, 16 in 2021, and just 10 in 2020. Alberta's Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services, Jason Nixon, is speaking out following Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips' comments that the province needs to do more to address the housing crisis in our city. Phillips says rising poverty is causing more homelessness. She says the Alberta NDP put forward several recommendations to address the issue, including the formation of an all-party committee. Minister Nixon shared his response to Phillips' comments with our very own Hal Roberts.
So, Minister Nixon, how do you respond to Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips, who says that Lethbridge has a real homeless and housing crisis?
You know, when the NDP were in power between 2015 and 2019, Shannon Phillips was there and oversaw a 76% increase to the affordable housing waiting list. So, you know, with all due respect to Shannon Phillips, we don't tend to be lectured about affordable housing by her. Instead, we're focused on our plan, which is investment in recovery beds, as well as investments inside affordable housing and homeless shelters. And you're going to see over the next 3 years, over $1 billion being invested by the Alberta government into new affordable housing units, on top of about $250 million in rent supplements, on top of an investment of 10,000 new recovery beds inside our province, which we think is going to continue to cause the affordable housing wait list to go down.
So what are your thoughts on potentially forming an all-party committee to address some of the homeless issues that many regions in our province are facing?
Albertans are waiting for that investment to take place. They're not, we know there has to be an investment in affordable housing. We know it's a priority. And so I would say the province doesn't need a bunch of politicians sitting around the committee table coming up with the same solution. The solution is to invest, and that's going to take place now. It's already passed through the Alberta budget.
Thank you so much for your time. That was Alberta Social Services Minister Jason Nixon joining us from Sundre.
Coming up after the break, Hal Roberts talks cost of living, family budgets, and more with Lethbridge MP Rachel Thomas. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Many Albertans are wondering why the federal Liberals continue to increase the carbon tax burden on Canadians. Earlier this week, Hal Roberts chatted with Lethbridge MP Rachel Thomas to discuss how we got here and what can be expected going forward. Have a look.
Now, Rachel, the Trudeau government's second carbon tax is also kicking us. Well, we're down right now. I mean, it's not making life any easier for so many of us. Why isn't the message getting across to our Prime Minister that Canadians really need a break right now?
Yeah, Hal, I think it's an excellent question, and certainly one that I'm hearing a lot about from constituents. I think it comes down to this. I think we have a Prime Minister who is much more interested in upholding his ideology than he is in listening to common sense. He's more in tune with himself and his goals than he is with the needs of Canadians. And I think, we're seeing that in a myriad of areas, but this is definitely one of them. Adding a second carbon tax is going to drive up the cost of living for Canadians. Based on an independent review that was done on it, it plus the first carbon tax, so both combined, are going to add an additional $4,000 per year in expenses to the average Canadian household, which is a significant amount of cost, as you can imagine. And so, just even in my office, I've had individuals come in who, are telling me they're having to make choices between putting food on their table versus paying for medication versus being able to pay their home heating bill. I think there's this feeling of desperation and a bit of hopelessness, and people just feeling disempowered by the massive skyrocketing cost of living that they're experiencing and just the overall challenges that are hitting them at the moment.
Rachel, let's talk about Bill C-18 for just a moment here. It passed through the Senate, received royal assent, and it'll put the state squarely in the newsroom of our country, including here at Bridge City News. And many people argue that it hinders journalistic independence while removing choices from Canadians. Can you explain why?
Sure. So at the heart of Bill C-18 is this idea that news outlets would be able to enter into negotiations with platforms such as Facebook and Google. And out of those negotiations, Facebook and Google would then compensate news sources for the links that are put online and made available to the public. But the problem with this is of course, that then, first off, the CRTC, which is directed by the government, will have to determine which news sources are eligible to enter into these negotiations and which ones aren't. So essentially, it's, some outlets will get a state stamp of approval and then other outlets will not get the state stamp of approval. So you're putting the government squarely in the newsroom. And then the other thing that's happening here is you're putting tech giants also in the newsroom. So tech giants will enter into negotiations with these news outlets. And of course, those tech giants will have demands as well. So they'll want certain types of news to be produced or certain stories told or certain angles taken. And in order for these negotiations to be upheld, those demands will have to be met. Which means then, really, at the end of the day, you don't have independent media anymore. You then have state-directed media and media, directed by big tech companies, which of course poses massive problems for Canadians because they want to be able to trust the stories that they're being told. But when the newsroom is being directed by government and big tech giants, just how truthful is it, and how much can those stories really be trusted?
A recent poll published in the National Post says Canadians of all stripes are simply fed up with the federal government's line on crime and drugs. It says every single demographic that people are really frustrated with Canada's justice system. They say it's far too generous with bail and too lenient on violent criminals. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, certainly. As you mentioned, the vast majority of Canadians believe that our laws are too lenient, that they are far more on the side of the criminal than they are on the side of the victims. That needs to change. And I think, again, this is where I would say this government is abiding by some messed up ideology rather than reality. In what world does it make sense to put Bill C5 in place, which took place in 2021? Under this bill, the government decreased or became more lenient with regards to violent crime. So, for example, when committing robbery with a firearm, the repercussions for that were downgraded. In addition to that, someone who would kidnap and child traffic, the punishment for that got downgraded. The list goes on and on. There's these heinous crimes that the government determined were not needing to be punished nearly to the extent that they once were, and so they actually became more lenient. Well, now you have criminals who are walking our streets, committing these violent crimes, often in a repetitive nature, and the government is choosing to turn a blind eye. That's wrong.
What happens when our culture and community hits the wall of wokeness? The answer is up next. Well, this is the holiday weekend where we get to celebrate Canada and those who worked and gave their lives to build our nation. However, this year, we are seeing what happens when our culture and community hit the wall of wokeness. David Craig of Return to Reason sat down with Mike Milkey, he's the president and CEO of the Aristotle Foundation for Public Policy, to discuss the book, The 1867 Project. In this next interview, we hear why Canada deserves to be celebrated, and do the wailing cries of the woke crowd have any validity? Have a look.
As we move here into Canada today, next couple of days, I'm a proud Canadian. I do love our country. I do believe, just as you're saying, is that human history has its shares of wins and its shares of faults. But I think as we can continue learning from our past and moving forward and growing, but also being proud of what we built and all the people that have contributed, I think in Canada, we have a lot to be proud of and what the country offers. And I want to ask you a question about your book. Does your book offer a path forward in terms of about Canadians looking at Canada and where we can go from here?
Well, we do. Myself and the other 19 authors certainly do. I mean, the first part of the book kind of deals with current issues. In the 1867 Project, we delve into identity politics. We delve into cancel culture and the problems with that. And the second part of the 1867 Project is kind of a corrective on history. So the chapters on John A. Macdonald, on, say, the British colonial empire. Were they all bad? No, actually. It was the British Empire that fought slavery. It was a turnaround in British society. And in Canada, we were one of the first countries to abolish slavery under one of the first governors to make it illegal, practically illegal. And it was pretty much dead by 1820 before the British Empire even outlawed it across the empire in 1833. So the second part of the book is a corrective to history. And the third part of the book looks forward. What kind of Canada do we want? And that's where myself and other authors get into, all right, can we rediscover a shared humanity? Whereas Canadians, we look at each other as individuals. We look at each other and we value each other for our character and our merit. The old Martin Luther King vision, which Martin Luther King had for his country, that he wanted a country where people look at each other based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. So how do you rediscover this? Well, we have some ideas at the end of the book, but also in terms of how you approach, it's always going to be connected to how we view history. So let me give you kind of an analogy. The problem today with cancel culture and the inability to look forward is that it continually looks at the past. It also says, look, we've discovered a fault in the past. Big surprise. There's a fault in each one of us today. What this does is it's like an oak tree. How does an oak tree become big and healthy from its initial, seedling? Well, when it grows and you see a branch that's diseased on an oak tree, you prune the branch. You don't take down the entire tree because of one bad branch. And it's the same thing with our historical faults in Canada. Canada has been literally a project since 1867, even before. And we've continually pruned Canada to make a better oak tree. But today you have people that don't want to prune the tree, they want to kill it. Or they don't want the water and sunshine, the nutrients and the healthy things that help the tree grow. They say, no, take it all down, or we don't want freedom of expression, which is like sunshine that helps the tree to grow. And so Canada really is a project. it's like an oak tree. And the proper way to view Canada and into the future is like, what is going to help us grow? What are the ideas that are going to help? What are the nutrients that it's going to help the tree that is Canada grow? It may seem simplistic, but that's exactly what a country is. And we need to unite around laudable ideas, precisely because there's 200 different identities in Canada. When you think about all the nationalities, ethnicities, where people have come from over the centuries and even the millennia. So the last part of the 1867 project is a positive look forward, with a reminder that this is a great country. When you consider us compared to most countries in history and most countries now, the fact that you're mostly free to speak your mind, the cancel culture types aside for a moment, that you can mostly succeed, that we don't have a corrupt police force, that we don't have corrupt governments compared to most, across the world. Those are things to be proud of. So yes, the last part of the 1867 project is about rediscovering the Canada that we should cherish. And frankly, let's remember something. Let's remember how many people have died, how much blood and treasure has been spent trying to make Canada a wonderful place. Indigenous soldiers in World War I, who, even though they didn't have the vote, wrongly, 3,000 of them fought and died for Canada. And World War II, fighting against Adolf Hitler. And all that happened in the 20th century to strengthen Canada and make it a more free, flourishing nation. These are all positive things, which we should celebrate on July 1st.
After the break, we learn about the wildlands and natural areas of the Crow's Nest Pass. They are just waiting to be explored. There's really no right or wrong way to experience Canada's Rocky Mountains, and we have plenty of mountains for you to climb in southwestern Alberta. And to help you navigate and plan your next adventure this summer, we chatted with Brent Coinberg. He's a local guide and historian who lives in Crow's Nest Pass. Southwestern Alberta has some hidden gems and beautiful views. Have a look.
You're a guided tour, a tour guide, I guess. So maybe take us through what a guided day trip might include if we were to go on your tour.
So my most popular tour is to the old ghost town of Lille. So it's about a 4-hour tour, and not because it takes us like that long. We can actually hike there and back in about an hour and a half. But to go through the actual whole history of it, to see some of the little hidden gems of the old train tracks, the old little cemetery, and to actually see and kind of get that sense of feeling that you're actually right in the town site on how we kind of explain it. We just go through the whole history of it. And then I go through some of the history of when the Crow Indians were there, the Blackfoot used to travel through there, and the Cree would come through as well. So we go through all that history in that area, and then later on this summer, we'll be offering hikes into the old quarries where they used to make their arrowheads as well.
Okay, so there's so many great places in that part of the province. So do you have maybe like a list of your top 3 favorite locations that you like to take people, or that you recommend people check out in the summertime?
Yes, so I always highly suggest for the hikes Lille would be number 1, just because of the history of it. The plane crash, which is in York Creek Basin, South York Creek, would be probably our number 2. It would be a close number 2, 3, and then the Stark Creek Falls. It's a really short hike, but it takes you up a beautiful canyon. And then there's waterfalls that's about 25 feet in height, 30 feet in height, and it's absolutely gorgeous in there.
What is the waterfall called? I love waterfalls.
So it's Stark Creek Falls.
Okay, awesome.
We also have tons of other waterfalls in the area as well.
Aren't there? I know. I love them. I'll have to check that one out. The plane crash. I saw pictures of this on your website. It's incredible. Maybe talk about what this is. It was an old military plane that went down, right? Now it's kind of covered in like vines and bushes and stuff. It looks like something out of the show Lost, literally.
Yes. Excuse my detail. I think it was 1946. The plane was traveling from the west coast, traveling to the east coast, and come across a big storm in and around the Cranbrook area. So the plane, or ground last received contact with the plane around Cranbrook, and then just lost all contact with the plane. Well, 2 days later, forestry officials in the town of Coleman, which is the furthest west town in the Crowsnest Pass, saw smoke coming from the mountains to the south of them. So they got a search party together, and they snowshoed in and found the wreckage. Unfortunately, all 7 passengers passed away. So they retrieved the bodies, brought them home. That way they go back to their loved ones. And then now it's part of the Castle Park. And unfortunately, a lot of people over the years have taken pieces and parts of the plane out. So we're hoping that what's left of the plane, between the tail section, a couple of the wings, an engine, and some other pieces and parts, hopefully people will just kind of
just leave it be, right?
Exactly.
Yes. Do people ever ask you about the Lost Lemons mine?
As a child growing up, my family used to go up there, and we spent a lot of time up there in the summers. My uncle Mike had, I can't recall if it was 13 up to 18 different mine rights. So he had some 13 or 18 of those documented where he actually owned that spot. They found the Lost Lemon mine. Unfortunately, he never did it. Him and his partner Arnold Morris were always up there, and they tried for 40 years, 50 years. And I remember as a kid hearing all these stories. We did find little flakes here and there, the odd little nugget up there, but we never hit the jackpot, unfortunately.
To watch the full-length versions of those last 3 interviews, head on over to our website, bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to check out our YouTube channel and give us a like and subscribe to stay up to date on new content that publishes daily. After the break, stories from around southern Alberta.
We're definitely aware of a lot of the issues that we're seeing in there. There was some encampment enforcement that was done a few weeks ago.
If you live on the west side of the city and work on the north or south side, it was tough trying to get home on Wednesday. A single vehicle collision involving a highway tractor shut down westbound Whoop-Up at around 4:40 on Wednesday afternoon. A second multi-vehicle collision involving 10 vehicles was reported at the Old Man River Bridge westbound on Highway 3 about an hour later. Both roads were blocked for quite some time. Fortunately, there were no injuries, and around 7 p.m., Lethbridge police reported that the westbound lanes of the Crowsnest Trail had been reopened. As a result of the collision on Whoop-Up, however, the city says there was significant damage to the road, so a construction crew was sent out to do the repairs. There was also a third collision. It also took place on Highway 3 involving a couple of semis where one rear-ended the other. A 39-year-old Carson man was charged with following too closely in that crash. Lethbridge police have also laid charges against the driver of a highway tractor who rolled his truck on Whoop-Up Drive on Wednesday. The 29-year-old Lethbridge man faces a wide range of charges, including operating a trailer without a functioning brake system, towing a trailer without proper attachments, and exceeding the certificate weight. The tickets carry a toll fine of just over $1,000. The city says they have been hearing some concerns surrounding a new play space currently being built at Galt Gardens in Lethbridge. Some of the main concerns include safety, costs for the build, and issues surrounding behaviors happening in the park. An official with the city talks about some of the ways they plan to mitigate those concerns once the play space is completed.
We're definitely aware of a lot of the issues that we're seeing in there. There was some encampment enforcement that was done a few weeks ago. We've actually increased our cleaning capacity within the park between our Clean Sweep program and our parks crews. And we're also having parks do some additional work within the park to create better sight lines and those types of things to really help with the feeling of safety and to encourage people to come in and utilize the park.
Construction on the new play space will take place over the summer, and the city anticipates it will be ready for use in the fall. The Lethbridge and District Exhibition and Farm Credit Canada have joined forces with local food banks to help drive away hunger in our city. The Drive Away Hunger campaign aims to eradicate the food shortage in Lethbridge by tapping into the Lethbridge Farmers Market. Video journalist Micah Quinn has the details.
The Lethbridge Farmers Market has been a staple in our city since 1962. Staff with the Lethbridge and District exhibition said as part of the Drive Away Hunger program, vendors from the farmers market are given the opportunity to donate leftover perishable food products, which will then be distributed out to the Lethbridge and Interfaith food banks.
This is our part to contribute to the greater food security conversation around the country, and obviously it's such an important message here in southern Alberta, but we're one of the regions in the country that actually can feed other parts of the country. We're a net exporter of food products, and so it's very important for this conversation here in southern Alberta to broadcast out to the rest of the country.
Over at the Lethbridge Food Bank, staff told us perishable food items are extremely important for their clients.
It's hard for us to invest in buying perishable items for the very reason that they're perishable, and we don't want to waste any of those donations that come in. So having donations come in directly for and as perishable items like that are great, because really, as we all know, it's one of the more expensive things to do with going to get food and going to the grocery store. So if we can help our clients alleviate that, it opens up room for them to take care of more important needs, health issues, things like that, where perishable items don't normally seem like that important for us. They can really go a long way for our clients.
The Lethbridge Farmers Market runs every Saturday from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. in the North Pavilion of the Lethbridge and District exhibition. For more information on the Lethbridge Farmers Market, you can visit their website. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Around 200 goats are back target grazing some of the city parks for another year. For 5 years now, the animals have been used to help control invasive weeds in the river valley. Since the inception of the program, the goats have grazed over 750 hectares of weeds.
Goats are a great asset to have, especially in our river valley parks. Our river valleys are very sensitive. We're right near the river. We don't want to use a lot of chemical or a lot of mechanical removal for weed species or vegetation management. So the goats are great. They come in, they target the weeds that we need them to target, and they don't disturb anything else. We are covering about 88 acres in 4 weeks, and they're covering the entire floodplain area of 2 parks. And so they're going out, they're targeting these weeds. They're not doing, mass damage. They're not bringing in trucks. They're not buying chemical. They're not supplying manpower.
We need to take a quick break, but when we return, does the suggestion to change part of Canada's national anthem provide the opportunity to address more serious problems facing Indigenous communities? The answer to that is up next.